Creepy encounters. Never give your real name to strangers. I was in different city for placement. I was going inside Morrison's and the security guy at the front was saying hi to everyone and he was sometimes saying, "Bonjour." The old man started speaking in French with him and I said bonjour back to the security guy. The old man heard, then asked me if I could speak French. I said yes. He started asking me some questions like what's your name and what are you doing in this city? Stupid as I am, I gave him my real name and said that I was here for placement in this hospital. I opened it and it was a letter from the old man. BTW, when I say I mean old, he looked older than my granddad. The old man was saying that he had a good convo with and wanted to meet up with me to have a drink, and it had his number and email address. I was a bit freaked out to go back to Morrison's, and from that day I tend to give a fake name to strangers. I thank God he wasn't like a mad person because he basically knew where to find me if he wanted to. So guys, don't be stupid like me and never give your name and what you do or where you work or live. Stay safe XX. Office bowling team and how I met my stalker. Years ago I worked at a very large manufacturing facility. Our local site had over 1,000 employees. I worked in an office and I frequently made trips through the factory. It's important to note that at this time, the plant manager had everyone on site take a special course that promoted team building and thinking outside the box and how to grow your mind. I was chosen to be a facilitator and learned to teach these classes. Each group that went through the class was recognized in the auditorium and given a certificate. Here's where the creepy begins. On Wednesday nights, there was team bowling at a place close to work. Many areas from the plant had teams. Engineering, assembly, marketing, and all levels of payroll were equal on bowling night. On this particular Wednesday, I was talking to some friends at the bar area and other team members were talking to our group as well. We were introducing ourselves to the other team members, and when I was introduced to one guy, he says, "Oh, I know you," and he pulls a photo of me out of his wallet. It was a photo taken when I was receiving my certificate for completing the course that we all had taken. All of us went instantly silent. My manager, who bowled with us, told me that he knew the guy and that he would keep an eye out for him. Rondo from school attempted to follow me home. Saved by my therapist, got reminded of an encounter I had in high school, figured I would share. I think I was 14 at the time, and was pre-transition, still presented as a girl. I am walking home from school when I am assuming senior, judging from the color of his lanyard, fellow student with a bike makes his way next to me. I am autistic and had the gnarliest fucking social anxiety at the time, so I didn't really know what to do when he started chatting with me. It was fine at first, if not a little uncomfortable, but then he started asking me what my address was, if he could go home with me, and other weird shit like that. I was nervous as hell, so I suddenly said, "My mom has to pick me up at CVS, bye," and booked it to the pharmacy across the street. I stood outside, desperately texting my mom to pick me up, when lo and fucking behold my therapist walked out of the CVS. Stared at her in absolute fucking awe for like 15 seconds before explaining what happened. Bike dude was somewhat lingering from across the street, but left soon after I started chatting with my therapist. Get yourself a therapist that helps you through CPTSD and make sure you don't get murdered. Another drunk in the Macca's drive-thru. Didn't want to be back here with another Macca's story, but here I am. This one happened around 9 p.m. last Friday night. Firstly, a little background. I was making the drinks and ice creams for customers coming through the drive-thru. There is 2 windows in that little area. One is the window where the customers get their food, and there is another, barred, window facing where the car drive onto the road and facing the car park. Near this window is where all our drink and ice cream machines for drive-thru are. Now I had just turned around to go make a milkshake and I see this cracked out looking man standing at the back window. His hands were white-knuckled, gripping onto the window bars, and his eyes were as wide as anything. This man looked like he was on 7 different drugs at least. Obviously that initial sighting scared the daylights out of me, but then he opened his mouth. The man smiled at me and said, "Hey, why are you closed? Only our drive-thru was running at that time. Only our drive-thru is open, sorry." Me: "I can come in and help, just come and open the door for me, sweetheart." Creepy man: "It's all right, really." Me: "And this point I turned around to see if any of my other coworkers were seeing this, and when I turned back the man was impossibly closer to the window. You are on gorgeous little thing, aren't you? Just come outside for me, yeah?" Creepy man, and that line I was done. My creep level was at its most, so I just walked away from the window. This is all coming from a fully grown man. I am in high school. I saw him walk further into the parking lot, but he disappeared into the darkness before I could see which way he went, so that added to the creepiness. And what was even worse? I finished only 10 minutes later, and I was shitting myself the whole walk to my car. I swear to God, my town is just wild, honestly just waiting to leave at this point. It walked right up to our vehicle. This encounter took place in my hometown, in January of 2014. Every so often I catch myself replaying the event in my head, and I'm still just as perplexed now as I was as it unfolded in real time, right in front of me. It was cold that winter, damn cold. There was a good amount of snow on the ground at the time, and if I remember correctly it was snowing when my girlfriend at the time and I pulled my truck into a lonely stretch of dirt road that hugged the shoreline of the lake that we often would go to, at odd hours of the night or morning, to do what young couples like to do. It was 2:30 a.m. and dead quiet as I turned the engine off, and we sat there in pitch-black darkness, just enjoying the moment. Parked no more than 10 feet away from the shoreline, the water was dead calm, and not a hint of sound coming from anywhere. I stress this fact because after 10 or 15 minutes I noticed that the water had ever so slightly started pushing waves against the shoreline. A few moments later the waves were coming on as if a pro-bass boat had just sped by. I noticed this, my girlfriend hadn't. She was doing something on her phone, or maybe fixing her hair, I'm not sure. Then I heard it. Something on two legs was walking in the water towards the shore. Once it got to the shore and made a couple steps on the ground, my GF stopped what she was doing and looked up at me quickly, her eyes wide with horror as she realized what she had been hearing all along but not computing. The steps this thing was making were heavy. And I don't say that lightly. Whatever this was, it was a behemoth. I started the truck up, put the high beams on, and rooster-tailed it out of there as fast as I could. Whatever it was, I don't think it knew we were there, and I didn't want it to find out. I've never shared this with anyone, and my GF and I never spoke about it to each other. And we never did go back to that spot on the backside of the lake. Almost kidnapped at 11 years old. When I was 11 years old I was walking from my parents' house to my aunt's house, who live in the same neighborhood, about a mile from each other. A man in a red car pulled over and threw the passenger door open, and as he was getting out a woman in a minivan stopped and rolled her window down and asked if I was okay, and the man got back in his car and drove off. That woman saved my life. We were almost kidnapped by the ice cream man. My cousin and I were around 7. We lived in a small town and my cousin's house sat on a huge hill with only a handful of other houses. They had a tiny driveway in the back of the house that connected to a one-lane road. We were playing there when the music started playing. There's never been an ice cream truck on our street, so when it parked right in front of us it was basically every child's dream. There were no other kids around, and the guy opened the window asking us if we wanted anything. Super excited, we told him to wait and we'd get money. Then he said, "DW, it's free ice cream day." Definitely a red flag, but we slowly went to big window and ordered. His response was chilling. "You need to come to the other side of the front of us." It was basically every child's dream. There were no other kids around, and the guy opened the window asking us if we wanted anything. Super excited, we told him to wait and we'd get money. Then he said, "DW, it's free ice cream day." Definitely a red flag, but we slowly went to big window and ordered. His response was chilling. "You need to come to the other side of the strange gifts left at doorstep." All right, so I'm looking for a creepy check here, as I am not sure if it is weird or creepy or a sign that my friend will be murdered in her sleep. I have a friend who just got married and moved into a new house with her husband. This is their second day owning the home. They went out for dinner. They live in California, if that matters. When they got home they noticed something at their front door. 2 things in fact. A Santa hat and a Christmas stocking. It's August right now, FYI. Inside the hat and stocking are some used socks with holes, some small knives, an old phone that she hasn't turned on, some ratty-looking jewelry, a deck of used cards, markers, a scarf, a kid's coloring book, and some other things. She has no idea who left this stuff or why and is creeped out. So the question, is this FKED up, or would you look at it as a well-intentioned gift from a neighbor? Do you think it means anything? The guy in Switzerland. This happened around summer 2019. I was 12 at the time and I went on vacation to Switzerland, Bern, for about 2 weeks. The vacation itself went okay, but there was this one creepy encounter I still think about. Me, my sister, 9, and both of my parents were in the train station of Bern waiting for our train to depart. It would take about 1 hour, so my parents decided to go and buy some food for us. The moment my parents were out of sight, a random guy I've never seen before came up to me and my sister. He had his hood on and looked like he was on something. He said, "Are you guys okay?" and kept looking around as if somebody was watching him. I said yes. And he started asking questions about my father. "Who is he? Are you guys safe?" etc. I was so in shock I just said, "Yes, we're okay," and I couldn't tell him to leave or something like that. I should mention my dad has a darker skin tone than me, my sister and my mother, and he has a beard. He looks really intimidating if you don't know him. And me and my sister don't look like him. At that moment my sister started saying, "Can you leave?" That man went crazy and started screaming at my sister that she had to. "Yes, we're okay," and I couldn't tell him to leave or something like that. I should mention my dad has a darker skin tone than me, my sister and my mother, and he has a beard. He looks really intimidating if you don't know him. And me and my sister don't look like him. At that moment my sister started saying, "Can you leave?" That man went crazy and started screaming at my sister that she had to. Weirdo predicts Somathong super personal. When I was like 16, I was hanging out late on Broadway with my girlfriends. We ran into a couple old random drunk guys that chatted with us. I used to be the ugly friend of the group, always having to keep an eye on the girls. This guy starts being kinda creepy, so I started telling him to fuck off. He looked me in the eye and said, "When you lose your virginity you're not going to tell anybody." I was like, WTF, get outta here? Weirdly, a little later when I did lose it, I was in a triangle with a close friend who stole my first boyfriend and didn't tell anyone. Not even my best friend or sister, for months. Still weirds me out today. Met a creepy weird guy while walking home today, so I was on my way home today when this person straight up didn't have a mask on. "It's still compulsory where I'm from," smiled creepily at me, walked towards me on a pedestrian walkway and raised his arm up and wanted to high-five me, but I was damn scared, as where I'm from it's not normal to approach anyone unless you're calling an ambulance. He didn't look normal as well, judging by the way he looked and his appearance, as no one would do what he did, and he was behaving really erratically and creepy, and worst of all, no one else was there and it was so quiet. I was so scared and I ran all the way back home, and I didn't dare to even turn back to see where he went. I honestly thought he was going to kidnap or kill me. Creepy guy at Walmart. Okay, so I was like 9 when this happened. We went into Walmart to go get some decorations and candy for the Christmas party at my school, and as we were walking in I noticed this tall dude who looked to be in his late 30s early 40s, and he was just staring at me and my mom. At first I thought it was weird, but then I didn't think too much about it. I just thought that maybe he was just staring in our direction. Anyways, so we get to the candy aisle and I was looking around to see if he was there. Just as we were leaving the candy aisle I saw him staring directly at us. Now I was really creeped out. I was gonna tell my mom, but then she interrupted me and told me that she needed cartridges for the printer. So we go to the electronics section and I went to go look at some games. Just then I heard a man say, "This is my wife, we've been married for 30 years. I turned around and saw the exact same dude literally put his arm around my mom. My mom looked uncomfortable and I was so confused and disgusted by this dude's behavior. Then he walked up to me and asked me how old I was. I didn't want to say my age, so I had to think real fast. So I pretended to be deaf and made up sign language. At the time I didn't know any sign language. He just said okay and left. Me and my mom quickly paid for everything. As soon he walked away we were running like Sonic out of that store. We went straight in the car and drove off. Thankfully he wasn't outside and thank God we made it out okay. Mysterious guy on ATV. What would have happened? When I was about 9 or 10 I lived in a fairly rural area on a dead-end street with a giant field at the end of the road. As kids it was the perfect spot to ride bikes and get into normal kid shenanigans. One day riding my bike through the field alone on a short cut to a friend's house when I see this guy on an ATV coming up behind me. Eventually he catches up to me, pulls right up beside me and just says, "Wait here, don't leave," and he takes off. As soon as he takes off I get this overwhelming feeling of dread and I pedal away faster than I ever have in my life. As I got back on my street I could see the ATV guy driving back to the spot where we met and I just booked it home as fast as I could. To this day I sometimes wonder what that guy meant when he said, "Wait here, don't leave." What would have happened if I was dumb enough to stay there till he got back? Creepy encounter while playing tennis. Me and my friend both play tennis and decided we wanted to play There are 2 spots with courts near us, but one of the spots had an all-day camp. So, we headed down to another spot, closer to the city, in a not-so-nice part of our town. We are playing for a while when an old man in raggedy clothes walks up. He just stands up to the fence enclosing the courts and just stares. He stands and stares for about 5 minutes when he walks over to my friend's side of the fence and starts speaking to him, unintelligibly for a few minutes, then over to me. We ignore him, and he walks away. We thought he was gone, but then he was actually just in a different spot still staring. Creeped out, we kept playing. He left after staring at us again and mumbling under his breath, "Have not seen him since." Maybe he had no bad intentions, but I don't know. I think I was almost kidnapped today. This is fresh. 17 fathoms but appear femme today. Was at Tim Hortons drawing random people and some guy came up to me, started asking me about my drawings. We started a conversation and my work came up and how I was waiting to go to work. He asked me where I worked and what time and I answered innocently. Then he asked me if I lived alone, which kind of creeped me out, but that's not the root of the story. He tells me he is a truck driver and I said I thought that was a cool job. He left for a couple minutes to get himself a drink and offered me one. I said no because I don't take drinks from strangers. He walked away saying that he'd come back and talk to me more. After he left I started to get a really bad feeling. So I texted my mom a description of the man's appearance. I told her not to worry and just told her it's probably my anxiety. When he came back he asked me if I wanted a tour of his truck. I said no thank you, and when he left me again I called my mom and told her what just happened. Then when I sat back down he came up to me one last time and told me he was leaving. He asked me for my Snapchat. I told him I don't have one. I sat in my anxiety and watched him cross the highway to the parking lot of my work, which happens to be a truck stop. He was still there at 10:38 and I had to be at work for 11, so I thought it was best bet to ask the Tim Hortons staff to walk me over, but they ended up calling the cops. I explained everything but they were gone by the time everything was finished. I feel like I wasted the cops' time. I explained everything but they were gone by the time everything was finished. I feel like I wasted the cops' time because I wasn't in immediate danger and like I was being dramatic. Me and my friends were being watched swimming in my backyard by my landlord's brother 3 years ago. Me and my friends were swimming late at night in my backyard. We were only swimming at night BC it gets super hot here and it's cooler at night. We were just splashing each other and swimming around when my friend pointed out a weird little hunched over shape by this little tree where one of our dogs were buried, and I didn't believe her. Eventually the others caught on, so I grabbed my phone and called for my dad, so he came out and pretended to swim with us. He noticed it too, so he started yelling at it, which was super annoying and embarrassing, but I'm glad he did because there was someone there. The dude stood up and put his hands up and my dad threatened to call the police and the dude started going off about how we were trespassing and living in his house with permission, so we called the cops and they were apparently familiar with this situation. BC our landlord's brother was notorious for this. I literally was so unbothered by this and I didn't think much about it until the other night when I was telling my friend about this. Still seeking answers. Back when I was about 7 to 8 years old, my best friend at the time, who passed away at the age of 9 due to an inherited heart condition, used to hang out frequently and spend most of our time together. It was a small, village-like town in Bulgaria where I grew up. There was a rather large vineyard we used to frequent on our bicycles among many other spots. Now it's obvious that as a 7-year-old my imagination would have been running wild. But there was this one late evening where my friend and I had cycled down to the aforementioned vineyard. And what's truly odd is that I remember this next part very vividly, where I had spotted a large group of unknown individuals scarily marching in a huge circle in an empty field in the vineyard, clearly headed in our direction. All holding up lit torches. You could say it was almost like a movie set back in time where a tribe of Native Americans would be marching with their torches held up in the air. The next thing that I can remember is my friend and I cycled back to their house as fast as we could, cowering in fear as we do so. I was scared shitless and even remember crying. I still struggle to explain this strange phenomenon to myself even to this day. I have always wondered what it could have been, my imagination or a real scenario. What do you think it could have been? Met a Nazi on my way to work this morning. Was headed to work this morning really early, like 4 a.m., and I always stop at this little family-owned gas station for a breakfast sandwich and a bottle of water. Anyways, I was standing there in line behind this guy waiting to pay when I noticed his tattoos. He had the swastika tattooed on one arm and lightning bolts on the other, along with some German American Bund tats as well. I'm sure the history buffs in this sub will know what I'm talking about there. So I'm standing there silently judging OL dude. And I mean this guy is huge, like 6'2" or something crazy. Yes, his head was shaved too. He gets up to the counter and the little girl standing there, well, she has a darker complexion, Latin or maybe Southern Asia, doesn't matter. And she's obviously terrified by this guy. Make a long story short as possible, Hitler light turns around and his freaking eyeballs are tattooed black and he has another swastika on his forehead. Creepy for sure, emo, and definitely not a guy the first one to meet again ever. My mom got SAED. So this story is not mine and something my mom told me a few months back and I can't get this out of my head. So my mom grew up in a small village in India and she was a pretty okay student in school. She also have to do the chores of the house cause my grandparents are busy in the farms. She used to get sick every once in a while and there weren't many doctors in that area. There was this one particular one who was praised by many PPL as a very good doctor, but what PPL didn't knew was he was an asshole. Like every time a young female got sick and visited him, he used to touch their private parts. Same thing happened with my mom, she was assaulted by this doctor. She was scared to go to him even if she was badly ill. One day at school she asked one of her friends about that creepy doctor and she said that same thing happened with her. After that they asked about it to a few more girls from her school and they all agreed with her. They decided that no matter what happens they won't go to this doctor. But sadly they were just kids at time and her friends have been talked to the doctor a few more times. 2 of her friends committed suicide. And one is mentally ill by all the trauma that happened. I feel really bad for them. Here's another creepy hitchhiking story for you. It was in the late 80s early 90s. I was hitching from Northern California to Oregon and was just south of Crescent City. Literally like right on the outskirts, but if you are familiar with that area, you understand it's like middle of nowhere and then the town. So, I'm there with my dog and this man pulls up in an RV. He comes to the back door of the RV and opens it, instead of me just talking to him as he is sitting in the cab to tell him where I am going. I found this to be odd and felt uneasy. The guy just opens the side door, looks at me sternly and says, "Get in." I was horrified. I turned to look at my dog, as I was surprised she wasn't barking at him or anything. She always barked at anyone whom she perceived had the potential to be a threat. When I looked at her, she was shaking violently, as if in complete terror. Super weird and creepy because my dog was afraid of no one. I looked back at the man, said, "No thank you," and my dog and I walked off quickly to the town. If the town hadn't been literally right there, I likely would not be sharing this story with you today. I am sure of it. Subways give me anxiety. Hi y'all, I'm new here. This happened when I was 20 years old, during a vacation to Malaysia. My family went to a nearby town and I decided to stay in Kuala Lumpur. I was traveling by the subway and as I thought my stop was coming up, I made my way to the exit. When I realized it's not the right stop, I sat back down. I noticed this middle-aged man who was by the door, as if he was exiting, sat back down too. I didn't think much of it, but every time I looked up I caught him staring at me, which just gave me the creeps. When we reached my exit, I was queuing to get off and saw that he was getting off too. I tried to walk slower in hopes to lose him, but he kept waiting. I decided to go to the security guards and that was when he walked away really fast. The guards were of no help and I was still afraid. I approached a lady and asked if I could walk with her, telling her what happened. And at the exit of the station, I saw him standing by a pillar, waiting. I told the lady that was the guy and she held onto me and we half walk half ran away. I kept checked many times that day and he wasn't following me. I took the cab back to the hotel and now I refuse to take subways alone. My auntie's creepy stalker encounter. So basically my auntie had a stalker when she was younger. Her name was in the paper when she was a teenager, not her address though. This is in the 80s era anyways. This random guy shows up looking for my auntie. Turns out he got came because she was in the newspaper and was looking for her. My grandfather at the time, who looks like the most non-threatening guy ever, comes out with a baseball bat to scare the guy off and gets my auntie inside. She was like 14 at the time. Needless to say, he never bothered showing up at the house again. I still don't understand how he found her considering she never had her address in the paper, just her name and the award she won. It kind of baffles me thinking he was either stalking her directly to find out where she lived and she had no idea or something else. Woman shrugging, medium light skin tone. The guy in Switzerland. This happened around summer 2019. I was 12 at the time and I went on vacation to Switzerland, Bern, for about 2 weeks. The vacation itself went okay, but there was this one creepy encounter I still think about. Me, my sister, 9, and both of my parents were in the train station of Bern waiting for our train to depart. It would take about 1 hour, so my parents decided to go and buy some food for us. The moment my parents were out of sight, a random guy I've never seen before came up to me and my sister. He had his hood on and looked like he was on something. He said, "Are you guys okay?" and kept looking around as if somebody was watching him. I said yes, and he started asking questions about my father. "Who is he? Are you guys safe?" etc. I was so in shock I just said, "Yes, we're okay," and I couldn't tell him to leave or something like that. I should mention my dad has a darker skin tone than me, my sister and my mother, and he has a beard. He looks really intimidating if you don't know him. And me and my sister don't look like him. At that moment my sister started saying, "Can you leave?" That man went crazy and started screaming at my sister that she had to shut up. He tried to grab my hand, but then my parents came and he ran away. To this day I don't know why he came up to us and what his intention were. This story isn't as creepy as the others on this platform, but it freaked me out. And though I might share my experience. Creepy neighbor. When I was around 20 years old I started getting love letters in the mail. At first there was no return address. Eventually the third letter I received was from my much older, mentally unstable neighbor. He expressed how much he loved and needed me, he wanted a family and so on. He told me he'd been watching me since I was little girl. That part creeped me out. I've been knowing him my whole life and I never had a clue. I don't know how he know where I worked at, but there were a few times he would sit on the bench down the street from my job and watch me walk to and from my car. He sat on that bench still as a rock and only followed me with his eyes. After that I told my dad and grandfather and they went to go talk to him, and eventually he stopped and basically fell off the face of the earth, never seen him again. To this day I often wonder, when I was outside playing as a little girl, what if he kidnapped me? I'm so thankful he never made a move from that time forward. I am very aware of my surroundings. Awkward moment when you're someone else's creepy encounter. So, for context, there are a lot of cats in my area. As such you hear small spats and territorial sounds on occasion in the early hours. When they get too loud or are stressing my own indoor rescue cats, I'll pop outside to quell the arguing, possibly offer biscuit and water. The heat has still been insane, so staying in loose linen clothing. Today no different, a flowing white dress. Matching my skin that on occasion appears luminous in certain lighting. It's past 1 a.m. Begin hearing fraught meows in the garden. Recognized the local cats and went out to refill munchie tubs. Hopefully stop a fight too. After calming the cats down I felt eyes that weren't theirs on me. Across the road there was a tall man in quite a large coat, presumably out for early air? He froze after I turned to see them, thought a little odd but said my goodbyes to felines and went back in. Later I realized how strange it might look. Some Striga-looking woman in white coming out barefoot to talk to some arguing cats. That did a 180 degrees neck turn with no warning to just look at you and wander back off. Sorry early morning stroller for the spook. Met a creepy weird guy while walking home today, so I was on my way home today when this person straight up didn't have a mask on. It's still compulsory where I'm from, smiled creepily at me, walked towards me on a pedestrian walkway and raised his arm up and wanted to high-five me, but I was damn scared as where I'm from it's not normal to approach anyone unless you're calling an ambulance. He didn't look normal as well, judging by the way he looked and his appearance, as no one would do what he did, and he was behaving really erratically and creepy, and worst of all no one else was there and it was so quiet. I was so scared and I ran all the way back home and I didn't dare to even turn back to see where he went. I honestly thought he was going to kidnap or kill me. I always felt watched down there. I am an amateur rock hunting adventurer from Oklahoma. I like to look on Google Maps and find a good creek with rock finding potential in the most remote places possible. Within reasonable accessibility, of course. Dad bod. A few weeks ago I was at a dry creek bed at least 4 miles from the nearest populated area. I got a wild hair and decided to try out my rock stacking capabilities just for the heck of it. Made a respectable 8-stone tower. Admired my creation and packed it in for the night. Fast forward 3 days later, after a nice rain I go back to the same creek bed to see if any good treasures had been unearthed by the rains. As I turned the bend to where I had made the rock stack, my jaw dropped. I stood there for some time in complete awe. In the vicinity of my rock tower there were 4 new rock towers. The odds of people going to that exact spot and doing that are extremely low. Also, I have been down there tons of times and never seen another soul, or so much as a set of footprints. Side note, although nice as they were, my tower was most handsome. I regret not taking photos. The bone fence I was driving home from visiting a friend about 2 hours away and pulled over on the side of a backcountry road because I saw a strange-looking gate leading to a dirt road. When I got out and walked closer, it was a fence-covered asterisk in probably hundreds of real bones, vertebrae, teeth, pelvis bones, leg bones, etc., all attached to this fence and tied to the surrounding trees. In addition to the bones there were old ratty stuffed animals tied up by their necks, and a lot of creepy vintage Halloween decorations. No sign explaining what it was, and no houses or anything in sight. I took photos too, we'll attach them in the replies. Need some help? Last night, around midnight, my partner and roommate were driving on the highway listening to the radio. My partner had sent me a message telling me that they had both heard a voice come through the radio saying stuff like, "Submit quietly. We control your emotions," and, "You will experience your greatest dreams and worst fears." Does anyone have any insight on this? I can't find anything online, but it also sounds a bit bogus. Help. Edit. It has nothing to do with meth. Phantom pickup truck? This may not be the appropriate sub for this, but I've lived in my house for 3 years and every single night at 1 a.m. this big white pickup truck drives down my street, which is a dead end, with his hazard lights flashing. The driver does not live on my street or any nearby street. I know because I jog and bicycle the area frequently. At first it was a mild curiosity. Then I kind of worried that it was a neighbor's disgruntled ex maybe, but after all this time I just don't get it. It creeps me out. Every night without fail at 1 a.m. Am I overthinking, or has anyone had a neighborhood watch like this? How do I find out the who, why? A creepy encounter in Catania, Italy. Hello guys. My name is Victor and I am 24, from Bulgaria. Last year in July, me and my girlfriend were having a trip to Italy, Catania, and everything was great. One of the days we were walking around the city center and went to a winery shop, then headed back to our Airbnb, when a strange-looking black man with some deformations on his face, which I saw from a long distance laughing, stopped me and asked for a cigarette. I had none, so I continued walking and he grabbed my hand, continuing to walk. Then I pushed his arm and continued going on my way when I heard him calling something similar to my name, which I am not 100% sure. But my girlfriend confirmed that we both heard him saying something like Victor, 2 times. I did not go to ask him where he knows my name from, however after I got back home I got a bit creeped out. Did you guys ever had this kind of creepy experience? As a kid I kept meeting the same woman over and over again. Turned out, my grandpa did too. When I was a kid, I kept meeting the same woman everywhere, but mainly near my school, for years. I would run into her at arcades, shopping malls, church, you name it. I can even swear I spotted her in my aunt's town, which is still in Italy but 1,000 kilometers away from where I live. Creepiest thing, when I got 11 or 12 I told this to my dad, about the lady I met all the time, and he shrugged his shoulders and said that my late grandpa used to see the same woman all the time too. And he then described exactly the person I running into. Now it's been years since the last time, and I'm almost sad. I never felt anything weird coming from that person, and if my gramps saw her too, maybe she was some kind of guardian angel assigned to my family. Door knockers, so this has left me pretty curious, but earlier today someone knocked on my door. And I know there's like a million door-to-door salespeople, but I had the opportunity to watch him walking away down the street. And he didn't knock on any other doors in my building or any surrounding buildings. So I get the idea to hop in my car and see where he goes. So not too far from my building. He's talking to this girl in a truck who's pulled over on the road. By the time I turn around they're both gone. WTF just happened? He got into a pretty nice truck as well, so it seems unlikely it's just some junkie trying to case place, who knows. Driving me nuts though, should have just answered the door lol. My saxophone teacher kept putting his hand on my knee. I'm a guy and it was a guy teacher. I had a girl teacher but she no longer gave lessons at that location and it was too inconvenient for me to go to her other location. Often during lessons, he would tap on my knee to keep the rhythm of the song. I told him not to do that. He could have tapped on the table. No matter how many times I told him not to do it, he kept doing it. A short time after he started doing it, I stopped the lessons. It was pay as you go, and you could stop any time. Almost raped or worse. This happened to me a few minutes ago. I'm still beside myself. I'm coming back from birthday party and my friend could only drive me to my neighborhood, so I had to walk a few streets alone. Suddenly a man appeared behind me and started following me. When he saw that I kept turning and looking at him, he started yelling at me, "Girl, stop a little, stop," and I walked faster and faster. I literally started running. No one alive anywhere, everyone is sleeping and right around me is a small park. What time is it? He scolds and I answer him and continue walking fast, but he still doesn't give up. Wait a minute. I didn't hear you. And I coldly tell him, "Boy, we don't want problems. Please get away from me," and he swears something to himself and just went to the first street that appeared. Fucking man. Unfortunately we girls can't walk safely. Van pulled up beside me and my sister. This happened a while ago, so it's not very recent, but I've been scoping out the subreddit and wanted to contribute. Since it was a while ago, I don't remember our exact ages, but we were most likely both in middle school at the time. We were talking a walk in our town with our mom, and at one point we were walking bedside a car repair place. My mom knew someone who worked there, so they were just chatting outside. Me and my sister both know how long it takes for her to finish a conversation. Be done in 2 minutes, turns to 20. After a while we just decided we would walk ahead a little bit. It is a fairly populated street and we hadn't walked that far away from her. We had only walked maybe about 20 yards away at this point, when a large white van came tearing through. It quickly swerved onto the lane on the side of the road for parking. It was so quickly done and rough that you could tell it was unplanned. Seeing this, my mom immediately rushed over and, as she approached, the van quickly pulled out and drove away. She definitely scolded us afterward, but this kind of stuff doesn't usually happen in our town. Plus we hadn't walked far at all. It was kinda just a creepy experience that I quickly forgot about.